Laura Latinsky, who I I don't know. Anyway, Laura Latinsky teaches in Chicago, makes these very beautiful, very aesthetically pleasing still life images. You can look at them and you can sort of connect them back to some of the very early work that we were looking at the very beginning. So, you know, the linens, this like soft light, these like sort of flat wall surfaces behind there, right? You can see the influence of those earlier Dutch still life compositions um, in this contemporary work. And then you look at it, and so she's making this work, and there's an article posted on the website if you want to go check out more about it. But sort of this idea of like kind of like asking for perfection, right? So there is a sort of interrogating the patriarchy in that sense, right? The way that women are asked both to do all these things, but also to be consistently perfect and beautiful while doing all of these things, and in some ways the impossibility of it. And she's making these images that are um, sort of after the party, if you will, right? So we're sort of like coming to these spaces after something has happened, and you have these like moments where there's this tension of things being right at an edge. There's sort of the post-party like decay, collapse, messiness a little bit that is both beautiful and a little gross. I would say that there's also, for me, the kind of like feminist subtext of like, okay, well, who is it then who does go in to clean up these spaces and then sees these things, right? We're sort of aestheticizing it, but it's also like somebody's got to go like throw that shit in the garbage. Um, so those are very interesting, I think. You know, and again, very precise composition, very precise color arrangement, sort of traditional materials with the glass and the linen. Here we have some birthday cake. Um, you know, the precariousness, like I do really like that bit, right? The way that we sort of there's an anxiety in the photograph because things are like right on these edges. Um, and then she started doing something that's a little bit more meta, right? A little sort of John Hauck-y, although not the same at all. Where she's cutting out photographs then of objects like this and putting them back into the image. So again, there's like a flatness. There's like the planes, right? This is you have here in this non-rephotograph thing, but you have these like the planes at the top of the table, kind of tipping up against the back plane back there. Like there is sort of a extremely careful compositional element to how these surfaces read in the rectangle. But then these photographic prints are playing with that a little bit. So June Lee for me is somewhere between the Laura Latinsky stuff and then some other work that we'll see in a sec. So these are a little bit more commercial in their vibe, right? So the objects are less small, meaning the print itself is also not like, you know, 40 by 50 or whatever Latinsky's work is. So, you know, if you have a picture that's really print that's really, really big, you can make something very small and still be able to go in and look at it and interrogate it and see what it is. So these are not like that. Um, and I would urge you that probably you can also not assume that your viewer is going to be able to see it as a 30 by 40 inch print because A, your camera probably can't make a detailed print that will be viewable at that size, and B, we're going to be looking at it on a screen, so it doesn't matter. But there's like a grossness here that's kind of fun, right? So there's like this blood orange, and then there's like these, you know, cigarettes that have been sort of like inserted into it. There's like a little weird like eroticism in there. There's this sort of like gross mix of food things with things that we don't want to eat. Um, you know, there's also like a little bit of lowbrowness, right? Where this thing that looks kind of like it should be tile, but it's really just pieces of paper. Um, Here we have again, right, sort of the linens in here. There's a beautiful soft color in this that I think is quite nice. The sort of like overall yellowness, that blue back there, the sort of like pantyhose holding these things, which is a little Belmer in the balls going around. Um, Here's another still life, right, using these frozen things, the sort of incongruous microscope. Again, like with the traditional still lifes, this takes place in kind of a nowhere space. Even with Laura Latinsky's stuff, there might be a hint of what the room is, but in general, it's this like big plain wall, right? And that's also the case here, right? There's no like electrical switch or sense of people living in here or a knowledge of what this room might be. It's just sort of like the photographic space. There's also an art historical nod here that I see to Irving Penn and his Frozen Food, right, which is possibly the most famous frozen food picture out there. So I feel like you can't make this picture with all these ice things and not have that in the back of your mind somewhere. Again, like the way that the frame interacts, right? This piece coming in here, all very carefully considered. With a still life, you have no excuse if something is not where you want it to be, right? Like you have total control. Nothing is moving. The camera is fixed. The objects are fixed, right? If it's not where you want, stop and move it, right? Think about where it is. Think about where it should be, right? You have no like, there's no like, oh, I wanted it to do this, but what? Like it's fucking right there. Just do it. Like stop. Don't complain to me about that. Just, rawr. Right. Again, also, right. The photograph is not just a picture of some stuff sitting there with a bunch of space all around it. Some of the historical ones were more like this. This is definitely engaging with the frame, right, in a way that I think is smart and well done.